بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد فإن أحسن الكلام كلام الله وخير الهدى هدى محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وإن شر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. So this is the fifth lesson in the series on the story of Moosa alayhi salam and Firawn. And in the previous lesson we finished looking at the part of the story which rehearsed the arguments that Moosa alayhi salam put to Firawn and the dialogues that took place between Moosa and Firawn with respect to the rububiyyah of Allah Azza wa Jal, the Allah's lordship, and how that makes it binding that a person submit to the uluhiyyah of Allah Azza wa Jal. And so Moosa alayhi salam, he presented to him the evidences for first of all, the existence of Allah Azza wa Jal and His rububiyyah, meaning His lordship, His creatorship, His ownership, His control over the creation. So we looked at that in some detail. We looked at the two dialogues, one which was in Surah Ash-Shu'ara and one which was in Surah Taha. And so we discussed those dialogues in a bit of detail, and we elaborated upon the type of argument, or the type of argument that Moosa alayhi salam used. And so basically a reflection of the argument in general in the Quran, whereby the prophets alayhi salatu wasalam, they use clear visible signs in the creation which everyone can see, which everyone can observe and witness on a day-to-day basis, and that those signs in and of themselves are direct evidence, first-hand evidence of the existence of Allah Azza wa Jal. And we said that this type of argument is very simple, very direct. It is not philosophical, it is not long-winded, it is not something that the average person cannot understand. It does not require detailed knowledge of philosophy and things like this, because the hujjah of Allah, the proof of Allah Azza wa Jal, has to be accessible to every single person, irrespective of their level of their intelligence, because everyone is accountable to Allah Azza wa Jal. And so therefore the nature of the proof has to be something that is visible to the eyes, or heard, which is the Quran, but at least visible to the eyes for every single person. So every single person, when he wakes in the morning, he experiences the day and then the night, and he sees the phenomena of the motion of the sun and the moon, and he experiences directly the favors of the rain, the winds, the plants, the animals, from which he derives meat and food and drink and clothing, and so on and so forth. So the evidences have to be very direct and very apparent to every person. And so this is the nature of the proof. The nature of the argument is very simple, very direct. And that's why, as the scholars explain, like Sheikh Salih Al-Fawzan says, that the hujjah is already established upon the creation. There's no other argument to make, because the hujjah, the nature of the proof is already established. Because it is there, it is visible, it is plain, it is experienced by everybody with the physical senses. Right? So the hujjah is already established. Thereafter, all you have are just it's just sophistry, and trying to reject what is obvious. So when we interface with the atheists and people like that, and they try to claim, or they try to make you believe that all of this is just randomness and came out of chaos, and that life and the what life is actually based upon, it is all of this is just sophistry in argumentation. It is to flee from that which is very, very obvious and very, very plain to everybody. So we explained the argument here of Moosa alayhi salam, that he alluded to all of these phenomena and he established the proof. And we said that Firawn, he tried to use a number of diversionary tactics, false arguments, and we explained them in the previous few lessons. First of all, he tried to argue by way of the favor he bestowed upon Firawn. Second, he tried to use the act. The Firawn tried to use the favor that he bestowed upon Moosa alayhi salam by raising him in his household. And likewise, he tried to argue against him by saying that you killed a man and you violated the law in our country, you committed a crime, right? To deny the argument that he was bringing about Tawheed. Likewise, in the course of the argument, he tried belittlement. He tried to claim that Moosa alayhi salam was mad. He tried to threaten him with imprisonment if he doesn't, listen. And likewise, he tried to argue, how can you be right when all the people who came before, the religions they were upon, what about them then? How come they didn't know what you are calling to, what you are bringing? Right? So he used all of these false arguments, and it came to a situation whereby he was unable to answer the actual argument. Right? Moosa alayhi salam established the argument, he didn't have any answer. So he said, if you do not listen to if you don't accept me as your Lord, then I'm going to imprison you. So at this point, Moosa alayhi salam, he then moved to that which is stronger and greater than the actual arguments. He said, what if I brought you a clear sign, a manifest sign? And he showed him the two miracles, which are, or the two ayat we should say, which is the serpent, the staff which turned into a serpent, and likewise the glowing hand which he put into his garment, took it out, and it became a glowing hand. So that's basically where we stopped in the story in the previous lesson. We got to that stage, and we're going to continue from that point, inshallah ta'ala. And here then we remain in Surah Taha, and the story continues from verse 56 onwards. Allah Azza wa Jal, He says, وَلَقَدْ أَرَيْنَاهُ آيَاتِنَا كُلَّهَا فَكَذَّبَ وَأَبَى. That we indeed showed him all of our signs, but he rejected, he denied, or he belied, and he refused. He refused in arrogance. He said, قَالَ أَجِئْتَنَا لِتُخْرِجَنَا مِنْ أَرْضِنَا بِسِحْرِكَ يَا مُوسَى. He said, have you come to our land to expel us from our land with your magic, O Moses, O Musa? فَلَنَأْتِيَنَّكَ بِسِحْرٍ مِثْلِهِ فَاجْعَلْ بَيْنَنَا وَبَيْنَكَ مَوْعِدًا لَا نُخْلِفُهُ نَحْنُ وَلَا أَنْتَ مَكَانًا سُوًى. He said, so we will bring a magic which is like your magic. So let us make a meeting point or meeting time between us and you. We will not, break it. Neither us nor you, and we will be on an equal footing, on an equal level. So Musa alayhi salam, he responded, قَالَ مَوْعِدُكُمْ يَوْمُ الزِّينَةِ. The meeting then will be on the day of Zina. This is the day of celebration. وَأَن يُحْشَرَ النَّاسُ ضُحًى. And that the people should be gathered together in the morning. So we're going to take this passage and also the passage which comes after with the magicians and the sorcerers. But before we continue, we want to speak a little about the issue of magic, because we've now come to the issue of magic. And Firawn, when he saw these clear manifest signs brought by Musa alayhi salam, he believed, from his jahl, from his ignorance, or from his arrogance, he believed that this is magic, this is sihr, and that Musa and Harun are simply bewitching the people. And he also made the argument that you are simply trying to expel us from our land. You're trying to expel us from our land. And this magic that you've brought, we are going to bring magic that is equivalent to it. So let us have a meeting place in front of all, a meeting place, and we shall be on a level footing. So Musa alayhi salam, he chose a day of celebration that they used to have because he wanted all of the people to be present to see Fir'aun falsified. So before we continue in the story and look at the commentary of Ibn Kathir rahimahullah, we want to speak here because now we are faced with two things. The first thing are what we call in English a miracle, even though this is not really the best term, and also the issue of that which is magic, sihr. So Musa, he brought ayat, which are signs from Allah Azza wa Jal, and Fir'aun accused him of performing magic. So the question now arises, and this is actually a question to do with our belief, our aqidah, which is, how do we know who is a genuine prophet? How do we know who is a genuine prophet? And how do we distinguish what a prophet brings from that which is done by the sorcerers, the magicians, the soothsayers, the fortune tellers, those types of people? Right? Because this is an issue that is discussed when we come to the topic of Aqidah, especially when it comes to dealing with the prophethood and the nature of prophethood, and how is a prophet known, and so on and so forth. And how is he distinguished from people who do extraordinary things, like magicians, like fortune tellers. And so in this topic we see that historically the various groups, they tried to speak about this topic, and many of them, they erred when they tried to speak about this topic. And they introduced errors and mistakes into our aqidah. For example, among them are the Mu'tazila, and among them are the Ash'aris. Right? So we want to stick on this topic for a short while, and just look at the issue of sihr and the issue of miracles. So what we want to do is we want to really just quickly summarize the essence of the affair, and we find that from the people of knowledge who have really discussed this in great detail and done justice to the subject is Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah in a number of his books. He has a book called An-Nubuwat, which deals with prophethood. He has a book called Sharh al-Asbahaniyah, which is an explanation of a particular creed in which he touches upon this topic. And likewise, Al-Jawab al-Sahih liman baddala din al-Masih, which is the correct reply to the one who altered the religion of Isa al-Islam, the Messiah. Right? That's to do with Christians. And within there he also discusses the topic of a genuine prophet. So, and obviously one of the ways that we know a prophet is genuine is by way of what we call miracles. So these points are taken, they are a summary of the essence of the affair. So they can be known in the following points. So the first point that we need to understand is that how do we know a prophet is speaking the truth? Because anyone can make a claim to being a prophet. This is point number one. Right? Somehow the truthfulness of a prophet has to be established. And although there are numerous ways by which we can establish that, one of the ways is by way of what we call in English miracles, even though this is not a good term. Right? The terms that we see in the Quran, which Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah has pointed out, we find that 3 specific terms are used. 3 specific words, and we should always stick to those words, because the words of the Quran, the words of the Sunnah are obviously best. And so those words are, first of all, al-ayah, which is the sign, ayat, signs. Second is al-bayyinah, again, which is a very apparent, clear, evident, apparent sign. And likewise you also have burhan, which again, burhan is evidence. So these are the names which have come in the Quran specifically, and these are the words which the people of knowledge have used. And likewise, Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah, he has indicated that these are the specific words. However, there are some other words which we have seen historically have been coined and been used. From them is mu'jiza, which means which we translate as miracle. But the word literally mu'jiza means something which renders somebody else incapable. Right? It is something which it's like a feat or a performance or something which renders other people unable to bring something which is like it. Right? This is mu'jiza. That's translated as a miracle. Or we say al-khariq, something which opposes what is ordinary and what we normally experience, what is habitual. Something is out of the ordinary. Or you have something which is al-ajib, something which is strange. These are some other words, but what you will realize is that these words are very general. They're very general. And these words can describe maybe what a magician does, or a trickster, or so these words are not very unique. And although the words of the Quran and the Sunnah are very unique, an ayah, a bayyinah, a burhan. So what the scholar says is that when we use these words, first of all, we should stick to these words of the Quran, an ayah, a burhan, a bayyinah. And if we use these other words like al-mu'jiza or something of that nature, we should qualify it that we are speaking specifically in relation to what a prophet does. Right? So we say the amazing affairs, the ajaib, which the prophets came with. Now we've qualified it with prophets. We didn't leave it general. Or we say al-mu'jizat allati dhaharat ala aydihim, meaning the miracles which occurred at the hands of the prophets. Right? We are qualifying these general words, the miracle, the strange, the extraordinary thing, the amazing thing. We are tying them to the prophets and messengers, so we don't leave any impression that this is something that the magicians or the sorcerers or whatever else that they might bring. So we are making it clear that the deed or the act or the thing that we are speaking about is something that only the prophets can bring. Right? So this is the first and the second point. Right? The words are burhan, ayah, bayyinah in the Quran. There are other general terms. Second point is that if we do use those general terms, we need to qualify them and make sure that we are speaking specifically about the prophets and the messengers. The third point then is, now that we've established that the way Allah Azza wa Jal establishes the truthfulness of His prophet so that the people can understand and know that he is indeed a genuine prophet, is by way of the ayah or the bayyinah or the burhan. So these, what is the definition of the ayah then? What is the definition of the bayyinah or the burhan? The definition is, it is those things, khawariqul aada, those things which are outside of the ordinary. They are outside of the ordinary, that which we generally see, and they are outside of the ability of the jinn and men. This is a very important condition, right, in the definition of what is an ayah. Or if you want to use the word miracle, you can use the word miracle, but ayah is the word. Right? It is something which is out of the ordinary. It is beyond the capabilities of jinn and men. Right? And it is something that Allah does with respect to His messengers, and in doing so, He is informing the people that this is a genuine prophet. Right? So I'm going to read through that once again. It's very important that you understand this. An ayah or a bayyinah or a burhan, which Allah brings, it is something which is outside of the ordinary, outside of the usual laws and the scheme of things that we experience. And it is outside, not just extraordinary, but it is outside and beyond the abilities of jinn and men. So this means now this excludes magic. Automatically magic is excluded, because magic is from the handiwork of jinn and men. Right? So whatever is done by magic, by the jinn, this does not enter into the definition of a miracle or an ayah. Right? So it is something that Allah Azza wa Jal, He does with His prophets and messengers, and in doing so He is informing the people. This is ikhbar, informing the people that this is a genuine prophet. This is a genuine prophet. Now, as you can clearly see, this is point number 3 in our list of points. As you can clearly see, from the conditions then is that an ayah, its condition is that it has to be outside the capabilities of jinn and men. Why is this? It is because the messengers are sent to the jinn and men. It wouldn't make sense if what the prophets and messengers did, or the miracles that Allah bestowed upon them, were equal or equivalent to what the jinn and men can do, by way of the sihr, by what the jinn do, or by way of other type of trickery and deception that you see the people using. Right? Because then the prophets and messengers could not prove to the jinn and men that they are genuine prophets and messengers, because the jinn and men can just bring whatever they do, and it wouldn't be clear to the people. So from the conditions of this ayah is that the prophets and messengers, they have to bring something which is completely outside the capabilities of the jinn and men, in terms of the actual ways and means that they have at their disposal. Right? So in terms of jinn, we know that the jinn there's many things that they can do. They can travel very rapidly, they can take information, they can carry things, they can influence people in their minds, in their senses. There's many things that the jinn can actually do. And likewise, the jinn can also inform men of some of the secrets of Allah's creation, the things in Allah's creation, how Allah's creation works, in terms of the ways and means, the asbab, things of that nature. Or they can direct them to these affairs. And as for men, the men likewise, there are certain things in their capacity and capability. So what the prophets and messengers bring, it has to be beyond that capability. Now, once we understand this, we should also understand that when we speak of the ayat, or these miracles, then as the scholars explain, there are those which are time bound, and there are those which are not time bound. So in other words, some of these ayat, these what we call miracles, there are those that would be a miracle only in a particular time, and it would no longer be a miracle in a later time. So let me now give you an illustration or an example of this. For example, if we see that there are certain a hadith, for example, one of them is where the Messenger of Allah ﷺ said that it is as if I am seeing right now Moosa alayhi salam, as if he's from the people, as if he's on a camel from the camels of a tribe, Banu Azd, and basically he is making his way to the to Hajj, right? So here you see that in the vision of the eye, the Messenger of Allah, this is just one example. There are many other examples of where he is shown something. He is shown something that is beyond the ability of a person to see. Right, keep this example in mind. Second example is when Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu ta'ala anhu he was giving a sermon, and whilst he was giving a sermon, there was a Sahabi somewhere in Iraq. Right, he was out. He's engaged in a battle, or engaged in an expedition, and he called out and directed him, and he said to him, "By the mountain, by the mountain," while he was giving the khutbah to the people present there in Medina. And that Sahabi heard it over there, I think maybe it was Basra or somewhere in that region, and he heard that, and then he took the advice and he went by the mountain. So here there are two examples which I'm giving you. One is which is related to vision, and one which is related to hearing. Right? So that is an ayah, it is a miracle, or for those who are less than the prophets, it is a karama. It is like a miracle, like a minor miracle. These things, if today we were to now say that we can see someone on the other side of the earth and we can direct them or we can speak to them, this would no longer be a miracle, because now the technological means are present in order to achieve the same thing, right? And likewise, you can go back and you can see in history something which is 100 years old, and you can see on film, you can see captured events taking place which are 100 years old, right? To look back into history now visually, that's no longer a miracle. Meaning it's no longer something that would be a miracle in this time and age. And similarly with the issue of hearing. So the point being, there are some miracles which are time bound, and there will no longer be miracles in a different time because of the advance in technology and things of that nature. So this is a distinction, important distinction that Sheikh Salih al-Sheikh he makes, and he mentions it in his commentary on Aqidatul Tahawiyya. So this is one type of miracle. The second type of miracle is one which is not time bound, and so this would be, for example, the fire which Ibrahim al-Islam was thrown into, and Allah Azza wa Jal, He altered the properties of the fire so that it no longer had the qualities of heat and burning and so on and so forth. So here we see this now is a direct, it's an intervention. It's an intervention in the creation to change the actual properties and the qualities of something. Right? So this distinction is which Sheikh Salih al-Sheikh, which he has made, is very important for us to understand, because in fact there are many important reasons why it's important for us to understand this issue. So I'm going to stick to this point for a while because of its importance. So one of the things which is connected to this issue, then, this distinction between something that would be a miracle in a certain time and it wouldn't be a miracle in another time, right? One of the things which is connected to this is the issue of how we as believers, we believe in the unseen, right? The first description of the believers in the Quran is, what does it say? Those who believe in the ghaib. الَّذِينَ يُؤْمِنُونَ بِالْغَيْبِ. Those who believe in the unseen. That's the first quality mentioned of the believers in the Quran, that they believe in the unseen. And believing in the unseen is from aql, it is from reason. It is from intelligence to believe in the unseen. As for the claim of many people in history, from the types of atheists and other than them, they've tried to argue like this false idea that the only thing that exists is what you can perceive with the senses. This is batil, this is false, right? There are things which exist outside of your direct experience, right? There are things that you cannot see, there are things which you cannot hear, as in because you are not physically present. And then there are those things which it's impossible for you to see with the eye in any case, right? So everyone has to believe in something from the unseen, what they can't directly experience. So as believers, if you imagine that we were living in let's just say the 4th century after Isa alayhi salam, right? From our description is that we believe in the unseen. And we believe that within Allah's creation there are such ways and means which He has created that we have not yet discovered. And there are such things which are possible that we have not yet discovered, right? So in other words, a believer in Allah in that time would be the one, for example, who would believe that within Allah's creation there are things that, although we wouldn't think of it at that time, that would enable, for example, man to fly. Right? This is from the unseen, meaning that within Allah's creation there are certain things which are possible. Or there are certain powers, there are certain things in Allah's creation which He has created that we don't yet fathom, that we don't yet understand, but whose existence is real and true, right? So we would be those types of believers who acknowledge and accept those types of things, right? We wouldn't deny or dismiss those types of things, which are at present are outside the abilities and the capabilities of humans, right? That would be accommodated in our belief, right? So on that basis, there are some things which have happened, which we deem to be miracles, for which no one has any reason to deny, right? So no scientist can deny this idea of miracles then, right? Because the examples which I gave you about, which we see about, seeing something or hearing something which would be impossible in that time to hear or see, we now know that there exists the means to be able to achieve that. So if Allah Azza wa Jal is the creator of those ways and means, right, which we can use in our time, then most certainly He can bring about those ways and means for His prophets and messengers, right, using ways and means within His creation, meaning something other than directly intervening and changing the property of a thing. Do you understand the difference? Distinction I'm trying to make? The distinction I'm trying to make is basically, there are some miracles in which Allah intervenes and changes the actual property of a thing. Fire always burns, but because Allah is the one who created the fire with that property, He can make it have the opposite property. He can make it be cool, right? Because He gives things the properties. Some miracles are like that. And this is outside the ability of anyone to do. These miracles are not bound by time, right? These are miracles that stand for all time, because no person has the ability or the power to alter and change these things. And likewise, the Quran is one of these types of miracles. The Quran is an everlasting miracle. No, it cannot be reproduced or mimicked. Then there are other types of things which are miracles, but which are things which work based upon the way Allah has created His creation, right? And in times and places, there are things which would count as miracles that can be achieved by those means, but which would no longer be miracles at some other time, right? And those things take place. For the prophets, and likewise there can be karamat of the awliya, the righteous people who they experience certain things which are treated as like minor types of miracles. So the point that we're making is that there is nothing in reason or experience that justifies anyone rejecting the notion or the idea of miracles, whether it's the first type that I mentioned or whether it is the second type that I mentioned. As for the second type, this is very clear from the examples which I gave, right? Example of seeing something, back in history, or hearing something in a different part of the world, right? We can now understand that within Allah's creation, Allah's made His creation in such a way, by way of waves and whatever else, that it is possible for you to hear someone on the other side of the earth with there's no wires or anything. It's just through the air, right? And likewise, we could even envisage that it could be possible for a person to even float in the air, right? And now we can see this technology where something which is not metallic, does not have anything magnetic, but by using specific, very powerful types of magnets, you can make a grain of salt to float in the air, or a grain of sand to float in the air, or just a breadcrumb to float in the air. This you can actually see videos of them, doing this. Right? There are specific types of very powerful magnets that bring weightlessness. They can bring this idea or not this idea, but this reality of removing weightlessness from a thing. Right? This is one of the things that the scientists are baffled about and thinking, what is it that gives something weight? How does, right? This is one of those things that they baffled us to. What is weight, first of all? What is mass? And how does it arise in a thing, in an atom or whatever else? Right? But they're discovering that you can bring about weightlessness to things, right? So what I'm saying is that these are things which exist within Allah's creation. And there are many more things that we will probably never ever understand, right? For example, jinn or angels. These are things which are beyond the human mind, but they're also beyond any ways or means that we could ever have of investigating these things. Some things we just can't investigate, right? They're beyond the mind to know and understand these things. That's why to believe in the unseen, to believe in the jinn, that they are true and real, and to believe in the angels, that they are true and real, it is from aql to believe in these things. These are not fairy tales, right? And there's nothing within what rather there is in what we know that what justifies even rationally, even just through reason, that justifies belief in these types of things. So anyway, that's the first point that I was making, that's connected to this distinction between miracles which are time bound and miracles which are not bound to time. They apply all the time, right? They are, if you like, eternal miracles, meaning they apply at every time. They can be done at any time. So that's one of the key things that we need to understand from that. First of all, it's perfectly within reason to believe in these things. And secondly, many miracles of the past, they cannot be denied on scientific grounds. You've got no scientific grounds to deny that, one of the miracles was to, a Sahabi heard another Sahabi from such and such a different location, right? Because Allah Azza wa Jal is able to carry the voice through whatever means, because He's the creator of these ways and means, to carry them to someone else on the other side of the earth if He wants to, right? And there's nothing that deems that to be impossible in terms of what we actually know and understand of how the creation works and how it functions. So obviously there are these are some of the benefits in knowing that particular distinction. So once that is clear, we continue, and the next point that we want to make is that miracles then, or the ayat of Allah Azza wa Jal, they are just one of the many ways and means by which we can know someone is a true prophet, right? It is not the only way. It is a mistake to say that the only way we can know a prophet is if he brings a miracle, right? This is not correct. This is not true. Rather, the way by which we can know a prophet is a genuine prophet from Allah Azza wa Jal, there are many ways and means, right? Miracles is just one of them. So from those ways and means is, first of all, the akhlaq, the actual qualities and the traits and the mannerisms of that individual. We know that the prophets and messengers are truthful people, upright people, noble people. From their history it is known that they are truthful, righteous, pious, that they keep away from shirk, that they keep away from things which are major sins and things of that nature. So just from the upright character of the prophets and messengers, this is one of the signs that they are prophets and messengers of Allah Azza wa Jal. Right? So basically we have a combination of things. It's not just one thing which is just miracles. Likewise, we have another sign, which is that they make prophecies which become true. Right? They give knowledge of the unseen, which like for example, a man called Thumama came, and he came to assassinate the Messenger of Allah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Right? And he was captured. No one knew this apart from himself. So he was captured by some companions. They brought him to the Messenger of Allah, and he was tied to a pillar in the mosque. And every day the Messenger came to him, and he made the companions give him food and milk and whatever else. And every day he came to him and said, "Why have you come, O Thumama? Why have you come?" And he tried to make excuses. "Oh, I came for such and such. I came for such and such." The Messenger informed him that you came to assassinate me. Right? So he was stunned that how could this man know something which only I know in my own self? How could he know this, right? And there are many examples of this. So informing of the unseen, which is like at the present time, and likewise at times which occur after that. A short time after you, like he gave the prophecy of the Khawarij appearing, right? And the civil war between the Muslims, between Ali and Muawiyah, right? And how Ali will be the one who will be more closer to the truth, right? And then many other things that came later, and then things that will come at the end of time from the signs of the hour, right? So prophecies and mentioning something of the unseen given to them from Allah Azza wa Jal, then this is another way that we know someone is a genuine prophet of Allah Azza wa Jal. Likewise, from the ways and means we know is that we see that they are aided and they are victorious against their disputants, against their enemies. So we see that the Messenger of Allah was given victory over the Persians and the Romans, and before that the pagan Arabs, right? And then Islam spread across, Africa towards the west, and then towards the east, going across India and so on and so forth, right? So this is clear, manifest victory in a very, very short time. That again is a clear proof that Allah wouldn't aid a liar. Allah wouldn't aid an impostor, someone who claims to be a prophet and is not a prophet. How and why would he aid such a messenger and his followers with such a huge empire? And then we also have, in the case of the Messenger of Allah, the Quran. The Quran is an everlasting miracle. So the point that we are making is that the way by which we know a genuine prophet, there are many different routes and angles. They support each other, and it is wrong to claim that the only way we can establish a miracle, establish that a prophet is a prophet, is by claiming that he must bring a miracle. Right? This is a wrong notion, and it is a wrong idea. Now that we've covered a miracle, what is a miracle? And a miracle is something that Allah is informing you by way of this thing, that this is a genuine prophet and a messenger, and that thing has to be outside of the capabilities of jinn and men. Right? So from this now, the next question that follows then is that there must be clear differences between what is a miracle, an ayah, and what is sihr, what is magic. Right? There must be clear distinctions. By definition, there has to be distinctions. So from the clear distinctions, we mention a number of them. First of all, that magic is something that is known amongst the people. In all nations, in all societies, people understand and know magic. They know what it is. They know that you do certain filthy, evil deeds to please the jinn, to please the shayateen, to please the devils. The devils will then appoint a jinn, and they will assign that jinn, they will send that jinn to go to that person, to that individual whom they want to be afflicted or inflicted. That jinn will then remain with that person. That jinn will enter the body. It will do whatever things were requested. It could be to separate a man from his wife. It could be to make him feel a pain in some part of his body. It could be to make him lose his aql, to lose his intellect. It could be, right? So all of these things, we know how these things work. So the first difference then, as we said, is that magic, fortune telling, with fortune telling, a person is just simply acquiring information from the jinn, who maybe have, one truth and they mix with it 100 lies, and they bring this to the fortune teller. All these, we know how this works, right? The mechanism by which the magician does what he does, all of this is within the created ways and means, right? And this is something that is known amongst all nations. Magic has existed for a very, very long time. And in every nation there are people who understand these affairs. They're able to go to someone who practices magic, and they're able to bring about these effects. which are out of the ordinary. So this is the first thing. As for the prophets and messengers, what they bring, then those affairs are not really known, they are not common among the people, and they are not something which can be reproduced. The second thing is that magic and fortune telling is something that can be learned and can be acquired. All right, it is an art that can be learned. This is unlike prophethood, and unlike, a person cannot train to be a prophet. You can't practice, and you can't do spiritual exercises, do mental exercises. You can't, learn to be a good speaker and learn how to influence people and then become a prophet. Right? No one, you can't become a prophet by way of that, because prophethood is something which is bestowed. Allah chooses a prophet and then He aids him and supports him. So we know that magic is something that the people indulge in. It is a craft that can be learnt. If you go and you learn from a magician, or you read certain books, you become a magician. And all of this entails that you enter into shirk and kufr and evil, vile, filthy things, because only then will you win the aid and the support of the shayateen and the devils. Whereas we know that the prophets and messengers, they bring the complete opposite of all of that. They bring tawheed, they bring justice, they bring truthfulness, they bring righteousness, they bring cleanliness, right, of the heart and likewise of the body. Whereas the magicians, they are the opposite of all of that. So these are some of the differences between the miracles, the ayat of the Anbiya, and the magic that is performed by the jinn and men, right? In collaboration with each other between the jinn and the men. Now, if you remember at the beginning, I said that we made in the definition of what is a miracle or an ayah, we said it is something that is beyond the abilities of jinn and men by definition, right? Now we're going to look at some groups who made a mistake in this topic. They made a mistake. They are the Mu'tazila and they are the Ash'aris, right? So the Mu'tazila, what they said, the Mu'tazila, they basically said that the only way we can know a prophet is a genuine prophet is by way of miracles. Right? That's the only way we can know a prophet, by way of miracles. This, as you know, is a mistake, because there are many ways and angles of knowing a prophet. But they said the only way of knowing a prophet is that he brings a miracle. And then they said, when they looked at the issue of magic, and they looked at the issue of miracles which occur to the righteous people, the karamat of the awliya, they said that if these things can happen at the hands of magicians, and they can also happen at the hands of righteous people, then we would not be able to distinguish between them and between the prophets. Which means that these things must be false. There's no such thing as magic. And there's no such thing as a miracle, a karama to the awliya. So what the Mu'tazila did is they rejected the reality of magic, and they rejected the reality of miracles which happened to other than the prophets, like the Sahaba, the awliya of Allah, and so on and so forth. Right? And they used their reason. They reasoned that these things which are happening, there's no such thing as magic. It's all in the head. And there's no such thing as a karama to a wali. This is just something which can be explained by the normal ways and means. Right? So the Mu'tazila, upon this false idea that only a miracle can prove a prophethood, they then rejected the reality of magic, and they rejected the reality of the karamat of the awliya. Right? This is how they fell into a mistake. And as for the Ash'aris also made a mistake. They said the only way we can know a prophet is by way of miracles, and miracles are things which are outside of the ordinary. However, magicians can also do miracles. They can also do things that other people can't do. But the difference is that the Prophet will make a claim to be a prophet, and he will make a challenge with respect to his miracle. Right? So in other words, what's the difference between a prophet and a magician? This is what the Ash'aris are saying now, yeah? This is wrong, this is false what they are saying. They are saying that a prophet will bring a miracle and the magician will bring something which appears to be a miracle. But the difference is, the prophet will say, I am a prophet and I challenge you to bring something like this. Right? And then what Allah Azza wa Jal will do, Allah Azza wa Jal will make it, He will prevent those people from bringing something similar to what the Prophet brought. Right? If you think about the situation, what really then is the miracle here to the Ash'aris? There really isn't a miracle, because to them, what the prophets and messengers do are the same as what the magicians do. Right? The miracle is really Allah stops and prevents the magicians from doing something that will mimic and rival what the prophets and messengers do. Not that they don't have the ability, they have the ability, but Allah intervenes and He prevents them from doing it. Can you see how this is false? This is false. Because here they haven't truly distinguished between a prophet and a magician. What they are saying is that what the prophets bring of miracles and what the magicians do of miracles, they're all the same thing. They're the same category. They are things which are just outside of the ordinary. Right? But what the difference is to them is that the prophet makes a claim of being a prophet, and then he challenges them. I challenge you to bring something like this. Right? And then those magicians, even though they are able to bring something which is similar, Allah Azza wa Jal, He intervenes and He prevents them from doing what they want to do. Right? If you think about this reasoning, this false idea now has an implication upon other things. Right? So for example, there's a discussion about the Quran. Is the Quran something that can be mimicked and reproduced? What we say as Ahlul Sunnah is no, it is impossible. The Quran is a miracle that can never ever be reproduced. Right? But if you take that understanding of a miracle that we just discussed, it would mean that the Arabs were able to bring something like the Quran, but Allah simply prevented them from doing so. Right, do you understand? Upon that understanding of what is a miracle. And that's false. Rather, the Quran is the speech of Allah Azza wa Jal. It can never ever be mimicked. It cannot be reproduced. It is outside of the ability of the jinn and men. That's why you see the challenge in the Quran. So if you were to bring together the jinn and the men to bring the likes of this, then they will not be able to bring the likes. Meaning it is outside the ability of jinn and men to bring the Quran. So this shows that if we do not have the right understanding of these topics, of, for example, what is a miracle, and what is magic, what is sihr, and what are the differences between them, right? We will not be able to prove and establish the difference between a genuine prophet and a fake and a false prophet. Right? So this is why this discussion is very, very important to understand. And what I've given you is I've actually given you the essence of the whole subject in a few simple points. Although it is discussed in great detail in the books of Shaykhul Islam Ibn Taymiyyah. But that should give you the essence and the crux of the affairs. So coming back to the issue, we said that we are in the story of Moosa alayhi salam and Firawn. And Moosa alayhi salam has shown Firawn two miracles, two ayat. The first ayah is the snake, the staff turning to a snake, which devoured, not at this point. He just simply showed him the sign at this point, in front of Firawn. And then he showed him the hand, the illuminating hand, right? Which is impossible for anyone to mimic or to bring that, even within the ways and means that we have within the creation. So when he saw this, Fir'aun said, this is nothing but magic. This is nothing but sihr that you have brought. And we are going to bring magic, which is going to be similar to this. So let us have a meeting, and let us, see who is, whatever. So we are at this part in the story. And so Musa alayhi salam, his response, as he said, is that, as Ibn Kathir says, that he said to him, that our meeting point, maw'idukum yawmuz zina, is on the day of celebration. And so this was on the day of a huge celebration. Musa alayhi salam said that we want the people to be gathered in the morning, meaning in the first part of the day when it's hot and it's very light, it's out in the open, it's not in the night time where you can deceive and trick and under the cover of night. It is out in the open, everybody can see. And so Musa alayhi salam, he chose this time because he wanted everyone to see the falsification of the magic that Fir'aun was going to bring. So we're going to close because it's time for the prayer now. But just before we close the lesson, we spoke about miracles, and we'll just finish briefly to speak about magic, right? So when we speak about sihr, magic is of a number of types based upon what we see in the Quran and the Sunnah. So first of all, the definition of magic is ma latufa sababuhu wa khafiya. Magic is a word, sihr, which means anything whose ways and means is subtle and hidden. Whose ways and means, whose causes is subtle and hidden. You can't see what the cause of this thing is, right? So for example, when you see a person going mad or losing his mind, you can't see any medical reason why this man should be behaving like this. Or when you see a split between a husband and wife, right? You see them just sudden change of character. You can't see what the reason is behind this. Or a pain somewhere in the body, right? There's no reason why that person, from a medical point of view, why that person should be having a pain, right? So here, we don't know the cause. We don't know the reason. It's hidden. And obviously, in this case, it is the jinn. So you can see how this applies to magic. The jinn, they come, they affect a person in his mind, in his body, in his abilities, and it's an effect that can't be otherwise explained because it is coming from the jinn. So sihr is when men collaborate with the jinn for each other's benefit, and the jinn then come and they do some sort of magic on an individual. They bewitch his eyes, they bewitch his hearing, they play with his mind, they play with his body, and so on and so forth. This is a type of magic. Likewise, the Messenger of Allah told us of another type of magic, وَإِنَّ مِنَ الْبَيَانِ لَسِحْرٍ, that indeed from speech is that which is sihr. This is because speech is something by which you can affect a person's heart, his emotions, without them really realizing what you are doing. You are playing and you are altering their feelings and their emotions. So some type of speech has been described as magic. And likewise, there are many other modern types of things that would come under sihr, which is even the use of technology to deceive your eyes, to deceive you into believing things which are not true, right? So nowadays, this type of sihr exists, where the distinction between what is real and what is virtual is no longer, you can't make that distinction anymore, right? So basically, you could be accused of saying something on video that you never actually said, and you couldn't tell the difference, right? Because your video could be taken, and then this part of your mouth could be inserted, and you could be saying certain things in your voice, but it's not actually you. And a person looking could not tell the actual difference, right? So basically, you can be framed in many different ways, and that technology is already present, right? Your voice can be mimicked. If all it needs is a minute of your voice, and your voice can be mimicked by computers. It can be reproduced. You couldn't really tell the difference with the ears, right? So again, this would now count as a type of sihr, that whose means are hidden and subtle, and you can't really tell the difference. So you see that the disbelievers they are able to deceive us about certain things by way of technology as well. This would enter into the definition of sihr as well. So we want to close there. The point that we're making from all of this lesson is that the prophets and messengers bring ayat which are completely outside of the abilities and the ways which the jinn and men can bring. This includes all of the ways and means within creation, like science, technology, and whatever else, right? These are the ayat of the prophets and messengers. And they are different to magic, because magic is something which is known, how it takes place, what happens, and so on and so forth. So we are at this part in the story, inshallah ta'ala. We'll stop right here. We'll continue in the next lesson. And this basically is where the magicians are brought. All of the magicians in Egypt, in Misr, they are brought together, gathered together in the court of Firawn, and Musa alayhi salam will come and he will invalidate their falsehood, their sihr, by way of the ayat of Allah Azza wa Jal, and the truth will be established. So we'll leave that there, inshallah ta'ala, and we'll take that up in the next lesson. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, wa sallallahu ala nabina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in.